welcome to SHOWstudio. It's Paris Fashion Week. I have a fabulous panel, really big, sizable panel, which is brilliant because it's a really exciting show to discuss because it's all changed at Sonia Rykiel. We've got a new designer there, Julie de Libran, who was previously Marc Jacobs' kind of right-hand woman at Vuitton, and she's had an incredible design history. She spent some time in some amazing houses, from Gianfranco Ferrari to Versace, Prada, so a really interesting character. Before we start kicking off with the dissection of what we expect them to do and looking at the show, I'll just let my amazing set of panellists introduce themselves, starting with you, Mandi.
My name's Mandi Lennard. I run a fashion consultancy called Mandi's Basement.
I'm Georgina Goodman and I'm a shoe designer.
I'm Robson and I'm a fashion journalist.
I'm Katherine Ormerod and I'm the Senior Fashion Features Editor at Grazia magazine.
And I'm Natalie, Theo, and I've got a blog called The Fashion Chronicles, and I work at Recipe, which is a tech startup.
I want to start by asking about something that we were chatting about before we went live, which is it kind of feels like it's been the season of new designers, doesn't it? We've got new blood in at Jill Sander, we've got J-Dubs in at Loewe. Do we like this when we get someone new at a house? Because I know often the fashion pack gets a bad name for kind of getting so excited about these big appointments, then not giving designers time to settle in. You're a bit hungry for change, but you're nodding. Do you like it when
Yeah, I get really excited about it. It puts a spotlight on a fashion house that might be kind of in a rhythm. I mean, even if something's great, if it's consistently great, that can be boring.
Yeah.
So to have these little shake-ups, it's exciting and it keeps it fresh.
Do you think that has been a bit of the case with Sonia Rykiel? It's kind of been one of those labels that it has been a little bit, perhaps not one that everyone was the most excited about. You're nodding, Katherine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it hasn't been the number one headlining brand for a while now. And going back to the idea of, new stories, new designers behind things, I mean, obviously we're all journalists sitting there and you're hungry for something new. You have to have something to write about to make people inspired and excited about it. And that's always a great story. You know, the changing seats around the chairs, the musical chairs, all that stuff.
You said you've interviewed Julie recently, is that correct?
Grazia did a big piece on it 2 seasons ago, so the season before Marc's last collection, and we did a big profile on her. Suzanne actually did it, and it was, it was great. She's one of those women that designs for women. She's very much in touch with actually the way people dress and what they wear, so I think there's going to be a real reality to the collection that we're going to see today.
Sure. It's interesting because there's a quote that comes from Julie that she said about when she was talking about Sonia Rykiel, and she talked with such warmth about like her own mother wearing it and how she kind of feels like for her, like, growing up in the 70s as she did, that it was really about that look. And she says, right from the start, how she used her own body and her own lifestyle as a starting point for designing her clothes. And I was wondering, because we've talked about that a fair amount on these panels with things like Phoebe at Celine and Stella McCartney, but do we feel like, I think occasionally it can be quite a lazy idea that all female designers design with themselves in mind and their own body. Do we think that's quite should we see that as more of a unique thing, that certain female designers like Sonia Rykiel do really, really well, rather than just kind of saying, every female designer would do that?
It will be. I think it's important because I think they're all doing it with a different bent. So what I'm expecting from, and what I always think of Sonia Rykiel and what I was saying earlier, is that when I was younger, I thought, I want to be French. So I'm going to buy a piece of Sonia Rykiel to give me a little bit of that sauciness. And what I like about her is she's actually sort of showing off a little bit of the female form, because her little jumpers that she started doing were a little slinkier than covering up or being, yes, there was an element of being relaxed, but there was still a little element of that Parisian sauciness. And that was so French, and that is what I think would be nice to see if that's breathed back into the brand today.
It's a very feminine brand.
Yeah,
it is.
Girly as
Girly,
well.
it's very girly, but girly in the French way.
And
it's
but
beautiful.
Yeah.
And French girl it's still very much about girls and French girls, so it's a sort of right time to be doing it. So it's sort of the spotlight's on it.
And it's also the right time to be doing 70s.
Exactly.
If you're talking about an iconic 70s brand, there's no better time to be bringing that back.
Sonia Rykiel shows were always the models came out in a kind of parade all
that
together.
was the best part.
And it really was, Linda Evangelista, the whole era, talking and chatting, like acting, walking down the runway as though they're having a chat, and it was
all the colours she put into those, and
all
there
the
was always
stripes
the
in
madness
unison.
going on, wasn't there? Like a sweet store.
I think it's also been quite a season of sort of passing on the baton, and it's such an institution as a label, so it's quite nice that there's going to be a new story for the institution, so it's not a compromise. It'll be very interesting to see how she reinterprets it without losing that sort of institution iconic sort of feel.
I think there's a lot of love for the brand, you know, even though it hasn't been, you know, maybe so important to look at what's going on that catwalk season on season. It's never, there's always a kind of like a love affair with Sonia Rykiel. Oh, it's Sonia Rykiel, you know, it's okay because it's Sonia Rykiel, but there might not have been, you know, the most important things to look at on that runway. But there's been little items over the years, like a key bag or a key jumper or something like that's been desirable.
And you smile and you become a little like sassy when you think about it. You do, because it gives you that, even if it's just with an accessory or you know, I remember we got these big pins once with the big lips and the face and you know, bangles that were always different, you know, there was more, but it just felt cool. You could just put one of those on and then suddenly you changed your whole outfit.
I think also it's important to say that, because we're talking about that kind of joyful, feminine, girly aesthetic, but also it's important to kind of remember just how much of an innovator she was, because as much as it being really fun, you know, the poor boy sweaters that you mentioned, you know, were so new, and even just things like putting writing on sweaters, you know, stuff that we completely take for granted now.
Well, she said she also was the first person to video her catwalk. Karl Lagerfeld did it in 1975 or 1978. I mean, they were doing that. How long did it take designers to start doing it now and give us their footage to review? If you think about that, it's exciting. I would have loved to have seen, if she was involved now, what she would be doing with social media actually. Yeah. Because they're not very prevalent.
No, they're
on
not
social media. But it lends itself to it because it's such a snappy, it's got so many snappy, bitey elements to it. You just want to kind of sink your teeth into that.
Yeah.
But it hasn't had a modernisation.
No,
well, last season,
now.
I think we felt that last season actually. I thought that was a great shift.
Yeah.
Miranda Kerr opening and closing the show and Katie Grant styling it. It looked very easy. Yeah. And where it should be without being affected.
Should we see, because they've done it's interesting that we just mentioned social media, because they've made use of YouTube this season to do kind of like a little introductory video of inspirations about this collection, which is kind of stripe heavy, which is quite nice, which you can have a look at, and it is quite fun.
And they did lead up a little bit to it on their Twitter account, saying follow Julie on Instagram.
Her
and then there were the
Instagram's
stripes coming up and all of the few references.
Hardy, 60s
yes,
makeup,
that was nice.
And something that they're doing with the store.
That was you got a little excited,
It's so French to me.
Yeah.
You can sort of,
you know, as a consumer, not as a fashion journalist, that's what I want.
Yeah. But it does feel like it's a brand for consumers. It feels like it's for women. It's not really for...
I love the pinball machine shot with the stripes.
And in Sex and the City, wasn't that the outfit that she arrived in Paris in? Was it the stripes, a Sonia Rykiel jumper? Wasn't that Carrie Bradshaw arrived in Paris with that sort of stripy outfit?
Good sense of humour.
Yeah, it's very naughty.
When she started the label, it wasn't, I mean, it's very, very Parisian that we know about it now, but actually it was quite radical then that it was so sexy. Knitwear wasn't sexy before. The idea of fitted knitwear, I mean, that's what amazed her, because she was pregnant. I think she was 32 when she was expecting a baby, and the knitwear she could find just wasn't suiting her as a pregnant woman. It was all big or itchy, and she wanted softness and tightness,
and also she said she wanted something that took her from day to night that she could just go out in. So it does give it that element of, you know, femininity, a little bit of sensuality to it.
So how do we see, because we mentioned a lot of the kind of original ideas of the brand, so things like the stripes and that feminine knitwear, the slightly sexy knitwear, the playfulness. How do we think that will become relevant for today? Because there's other brands doing similar things now, whether whether you've got Sibling or whether you've got, I interviewed Ryan Lowe recently, a London designer, who talked about how he sees a lot of parallels with his work and old Sonia Rykiel. And I'm interested, where do you see the brand sitting now, and how do we think that those codes will need to be updated to make it feel relevant? Because it does feel like kind of girlishness and femininity is around. Mandi, you love our girly film.
No, but yes, I do. I do love your girly film. It's called Girl, though.
The film. The project is called Girly.
But the interesting thing is, though, the girlishness and coquettishness that we're talking about can still continue in the Sonia by Sonia Rykiel.
Yeah.
But I think that the label you know, it has to kind of be a bit more sophisticated, and I don't think it has to be so literal, and I don't think that Julie wants it to be literal either. I think they definitely want to put their own stamp on it, which is how Geraldo was last season. And they also said when he was joining last season that if anyone was going to make Rykiel minimalistic, he would, but he just wanted to take away any detail that was unnecessary, which I'm sure Julie will be with similar, but I think she's got a lot of confidence, Julie, and I'm really excited to see what she does. You were kind of nodding there about this idea of how it needs to be updated. What's your thoughts?
I think the idea is that you want to see elements of the handwriting, the signature in there, but if it's going to be fresh and if it's going to be relevant, things need to change. You know, you probably need whole new categories. There needs to be a great handbag. Accessories should be focused on, you know, and if they're going to build a new brand, those are the kind of things that you really be looking out for.
Even veering away from knitwear.
Exactly. I mean, there might be elements of knitwear. I mean, head-to-toe knitwear's everywhere at the moment.
I was going to ask how the knitwear category has changed.
Or it's got to be you've got to have pieces that you can wear everywhere as a woman now, because there's such a fine line between day and night, and big glamour by day, glamour. There's such a fine line between it. So as hard as you make that all work, how can you give me that?
Well, Sonia Rykiel traditionally was actually regarded as a resort collection. I think it was this inter-season vibe, and very easy pieces, and like you say, as much as in between the seasons, wearing it from day to evening. And
but also I think a lot of focus had fallen on her Sonia by Sonia Rykiel. That you know, all the madness of that seemed to have overtaken everything.
So we'd like to see this repositioned as a kind of slightly more sophisticated.
Well, I think with Julie's background, I mean, she worked 10 years at Prada, she's worked, you know, Vuitton. She has the ability and experience to create a proper stellar brand.
We were talking recently about the shifting of Jill Sandra and how it's just driving everyone nuts, and like you become despondent because the helm isn't being manned, there's no continuity. Whereas actually, I think to say that there's a new designer after 3 seasons of Geraldo, and then Julie, the right people are the, what do they call, artistic directors. So, you know, it's not confusing. I think it's amazing that it hasn't confused the customer.
It's interesting also, I think that's really relevant that you mentioned that, because one thing that I found really interesting when I was researching Julie, one of the responsibilities that she had when she was working with Marc Jacobs was working on like the icons line, so doing pieces that were the iconic pieces of the house that they kind of kept reproducing. And I thought that's actually really kind of pertinent experience to doing this, being able to see what are the codes of a house and turn them into something that feels relevant and exciting.
Because you were saying when we got here that she was doing the resort and pre-collection.
So she was designing those, and I think she was really, really involved in red carpet as well, so she obviously understands how that cycle works. So it's obviously a really broad experience, and you know, Sonia Rykiel, there's no reason that it can't be the next Saint Laurent or whatever, you know.
It deserves to be. They must take it, and it needs to be one of those big pillars again.
Interestingly, Geraldo was her assistant at Vuitton.
There's that kind of little twist in there. It's interesting you mentioned that celebrity thing, because also that's what she was doing at Prada, and you think now that's more personal than ever, that kind of ability, because we're all kind of agreeing that we want this to be an exciting brand, you're a big player, but like admiration from the fashion press alone isn't enough to do that now. You really need, it's interesting what you said about Miranda Kerr, but you really need those kind of connections. And who do we think the brand would sit well with? Would we like to see them doing kind of cute little film projects, or you know, how are they going to make use of the kind of ways of brand building that are around now? Mandi, if you were doing their kind of advising their strategy, what would you say?
I mean, as I say, you know, I'm in no doubt that they're in the right hands. And I think that all those things are organically going to happen. This is a new, you know, the new era has already started. Julie's joined in. She will put her own stamp on it, but she's not going to put her ego on it immediately. You know, she's got to. You know, it was a good shift last season, and there's no reason for her to kind of shake the boat further than that. And she only started a couple of months ago, I think. And she also does another line, her own semi-couture line, which is
she doesn't really do any press for. She's very quiet about that, which is quite interesting. Yeah, it's a lot of work, isn't it? But were we happy to see a designer kind of put into that position? Because I don't think of her as a kind of
creative director role.
Well, I think she's not a kind of a big name, you know, in that way. She's a real industry name.
She's not a St. Martin star who's been, you know,
exactly.
She has done her time. Like,
she's very experienced. She's an experienced designer. I think she'll be a really good creative director, because she'll understand that you need to design a great catwalk show, have a great second collection, but most importantly for this brand, I think accessories, you know, more than any brand really, they could do great shoes, bags. I mean, they do cheaper purses.
They've always done great bags. They have Sonia Rykiel,
but not enough of them. The collection hasn't been a collection. It's been items. It's been like a great studded bag, 3 versions, but not a collection of.
Yeah.
Do you think it's that also she's going to follow a brief, isn't she? So she's going to look at the blueprint of what Sonia Rykiel was about and could be about, and it's that real French. It's going back and revisiting all the sort of really Frenchness, and that's sort of very key. I'm sure that.
But I think it'll be intuitive with her because she's actually French. She's studied in Paris at the.
She's a French woman.
Couture,
And it's like French as in the global. It's almost like sort of overly French as well.
Yeah, it's almost like perceptions of Frenchness more than French.
Her mother's wardrobe was loaded with
to take your mum's
Rykiel.
wardrobe, and now you're working in the fashion house that you used to sort of steal those pieces from your mum's wardrobe, and now you've got a chance to make those pieces, and hopefully your daughter will do the same with that. It's a great, that's just a wonderful cycle.
Yeah, she kind of talks about like coming home.
But you know, like there was Bieber in London, and then there was that sort of Sonia Rykiel in Paris. So it's going to be that sort of era that I feel that she should sort of think about for this collection.
Well, Françoise Hardy. I mean, Alexa Chang's been taking her style for enough time. Let's bring it back, you know.
Why do you think that 70s spirit is so in the air at the moment? Because we kept talking about it on the panels. We kept looking at all this kind of like boho stuff.
It's like feminism as well. People are talking about feminism, and Emma Watson's going on about feminism, whether or not we think it's like what we would say feminism is. So it's kind of, I think it's reinterpreting the modern idea of that again, which could be another sort of twist for the brand.
Yeah, that's interesting. What do you think? Because you're out in Paris, did you keep looking at things and being like, oh my God?
I was like, it looks like Austin Powers. Like, what are people thinking? Some of the things, you're like, it looks like costume, you know, on the street.
Why do we have the kind of collective moods that hit?
I think they all meet together somewhere and they don't tell us.
As well.
Yeah,
exactly. Stay-proof jeans in Gucci.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think it's something to do with freedom, isn't it? And the idea that things have been very structured, and you know, we had the recession and everyone was very scared about things, and then minimalism came into play, and now suddenly there's a reaction to that, and that, you know, the freedom of maximalism and wearing everything and colour and, you know, crazy flares and shoes and, you know, Austin Powers.
Yeah.
Well, you need a decade every season, so you know, sometimes it's maybe just depleted all the rest.
70s. You know, but all the collars and you know, all that stuff. So I think probably that's the way people.
It's quite modernist as well. It's all the sort of Matisse and the sort of colour blocking seems to be a sort of key thing, rather than the real saturation of colour.
That definitely is out there, though.
Yeah.
And I want to ask, I really want to go to the show, but I have one more question, which is this kind of, because I think it's been an interesting season. We talked about it being the season of kind of change and new blood, but we've also seen real different approaches to it. So we've seen, like this kind of example, a real kind of like well-trained designer that's done their time behind the scenes, and that's a really similar case study to what we saw at Josanda with Rodolfo Paglialunga, who's like obviously spent, you know, 10 years at Prada, and then his time at V&A, and then you've got on the opposite side of that kind of the star with JW Anderson just being catapulted to Loewe. I don't want to sort of come down too firmly on one side, because also each case is their own, but do we think it tends to work better when it's a designer who's comes quietly through the system?
We don't know yet. We don't know yet. It's not tried and tested yet.
I think the key thing is that you don't need to take a name gratuitously for the name.
Yeah.
I think that
time's been and gone.
Yeah, and I think that you know, you'd be a fool to take someone just for the name.
Because it does feel like that's what Loewe did.
And look at all this incredible talent. And I think that's the other thing. When the kids come out of colleges, what do you want to do when you leave college? I want my own label. It's like, oh God, please go and get some experience. But actually, some of the people that you hear of,
they're doing great
on the schedule at London, then they go off radar. They've got the most fabulous jobs at all these incredible maison, international maison. And that's really exciting that people like that are given a chance to shine. I just don't think you should take a name for the sake of it. And also, they're less emotional. They've been behind the scenes.
Exactly.
They've watched
they
the
can
politics.
work to a brief.
And they're more confident because they're not new to the house. They're not thinking, oh God, I can't do it. You know, they're kind of more grounded.
It is interesting that you say that, because I agree, and I think it's really interesting what you say about post Galliano, because we talk about that a lot on these panels, this idea that, you know, there's a real culture now that the name of the house is always bigger than the name of the designer, and we've kind of talked about that being the case with Wang at Balenciaga and lots of the appointments we've seen. And that's what I did find interesting this season, just to go back to that idea of kind of the season of new designers, because it feels like the opposite, Loewe, it feels like they've gone for that real old school thing of putting J-dubs above the house. And it's just quite interesting to contrast this to this. It's been done in a totally different way, much quieter. And
you have to have the names and you have to have the ego, otherwise all it's going to start becoming is just this sort of carbon copy, churn out the real. You have to have a balance, but but don't do it gratuitously or just to get the attention. You want it to work and you want it to be a success. But I think you can't draw away from those big name talents and the creativity.
I think he's been allowed to do what he wanted to do without the interference of the hierarchy of the house.
And sometimes there's so much pressure put on the names to fit in with the house, and I really think that maybe the houses also need to learn to click in a bit with their names. But who knows how that all balances out. I think it would be awful if you didn't have the big names and the big, we are getting people to work on brands that existed because of big names, even though they were their own brands. But it's just that's the exciting part. That's what makes things happen.
I'm going to ask a really cheeky question, but what would we want to see? So if we were in Paris and we were walking to the show, what would we be hoping for? Is it more accessories, better accessories?
I don't always like seeing great accessories on the catwalk. I like seeing them in the showroom afterwards and looking them up, because I don't like selling on the catwalk.
There's been a lot of that in Paris. I don't like it.
Fun. I don't like it.
I want to see fun and femininity. I don't want to see it all pared down and serious and kind of conforming to what everyone else has done. I want to see what I feel is the flavour of Sonia Rykiel.
I think I'd like to see a softer Saint Laurent, basically, so that 70s without quite such a urban, whatever, LA edge, something that is, very feminine.
I want to see a harder.
You want to see it harder?
Not a softer Saint Laurent. I want to see a harder Rykiel.
Exactly. That's the midpoint, isn't it?
You're nodding. What do you want to see?
Definitely the sort of the colours. I just think, again, just going back to the Frenchness, that somehow only in the past a lot of French people like the sort of Saint Laurent has done, and perhaps more tailoring to mix in with sort of knits and things like that. But definitely that real French girl look that you just think,
Cool. I don't think we need another nicey, do we?
No.
It'd be a bit snorry boring to have another nicey.
There's nothing nicey or twee about the French.
I want to see the French Mark by Marc Jacobs. I want to imagine Mark by Mark, like Luella and Katie have done it, but a French version.
But a lot of the kids
you
are
really confused.
I don't know if they've got that in them.
I don't want to see a reference to someone else.
If you look at what students are wearing today, they're wearing a sort of quite twee belle de jour. It is that sort of that sort of thing that they're wearing at Camden Market and that. But it is that actual tailored, bright colours. It is that sort of thing, and I think that would be good to somehow put a spin on that in some way.
It's interesting you mentioned students, because this is the project that we're doing with SHOWstudio called Girly, which you should all check out, everyone. It's fabulous. But that's kind of what we were writing about. We were really intrigued by this kind of really girly, coquettish, almost kind of cartoonishly feminine thing that we're seeing so much in London. So people, they do it in their own way, but people like Medium Kirchhoff, or even occasionally, Sibling, especially people like Ryan Lowe, Ashley Williams, Sophia Webster. And that's why I'm so excited for the show, because it almost feels like the originator of that's kind of, you're going to get that bit back where it belongs. It feels like it's quite a London-y thing now, which is quite interesting to see it with a Parisian element to it, because obviously she kind of initiated
I wouldn't
that.
want to see a London stamp on it though. No. On this, I'd be upset, because you see it, this has got to be Parisian, but for us now.
Not vintage, not vintage thing.
And not too cute.
But respectful.
Yeah, it's got to be French. Good luck.
Should we have a look?
Very much she was a Russian Jew, wasn't she?
Yeah,
exactly. Russian-Romanian.
Russian-Romanian. So it's definitely French with the colour palette. It's also that she left a really sweet note on the chairs where she said, like any French woman who were born in the 1970s, I have happy childhood memories of my mother wearing Sonia Rykiel, so I've had a lifelong connection to the label, and arriving here has felt curiously like a homecoming. I'd like to thank you all for joining me this evening at the home of Sonia Rykiel, because it's at the kind of the boutique, for this informal housewarming party, which is a very sweet way of starting these off.
Very nice.
And I'd like to thank Sonia Rykiel and her family for inviting me to continue the work of her house. So very sweet. I've missed all the
nice.
Great casting.
Yeah, really good casting.
With what Kendall Jenner was just wearing there felt really
French
marked by Mark.
Really
you missed the French marked by Mark.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
That's really, really good.
And those big buttons, we've been seeing a lot of those big buttons.
There
is a sort of Pierrot sort of feel.
I like that it's quite knowingly kind of, it's very deliberate, it's quite obvious in a way, but you kind of want it to be, do you know what I mean? Like
it looks very vintage Rykiel, with the buttons, with the dungarees. That silhouette is very vintage Rykiel.
Bags in every look. Hint.
But it is sexy at the same time.
It is. Yeah. It's cool.
What do you think, Mandi?
Yeah, it looks very polished. I mean, I like accessories when it's polished, but that's what Katie does.
Yeah.
She likes to finish outfits off, you know, the glove, the bag,
shoes,
accessories.
And I like the sectioning as well, because that feels quite like a vintage shirt, you know, like you have the white at the start and then you've got all this military, it's nice.
But this doesn't look like you just plonk bags on. They're
styled
looks.
looks.
No. So I'm all for styled looks, but it's plonking a bag on every look.
But you can
step sunglasses.
You can step off the catwalk in that and you feel great.
Exactly.
You're not going to feel contrived.
It's a great item, the tassel skirt.
I like that way of doing the stripes as well, as tassels, it's nice.
But it's also nice to have in Paris we're seeing a lot of a play with textiles and their textures, which I think is great. I don't know if you saw some of the looks from earlier on. I just think it's lovely to see. It's fresh, it's flouncy.
Yeah.
The one thing I'd say is there is a tricky element to it, because the mid-market in France is very strong. You've got Sandro, you've got Couples, you've got Marge, and you know there are pieces here that look like that they could have come directly from those rails. So you know the competition for this kind of aesthetic is pretty fierce.
So do you think they should have pitched it even slightly more?
Well, I mean, the price point obviously is going to be much higher than,
and hopefully the quality will be a little different.
Of course it will be, but you know, of course, but a pair of leather, you know, cuff trousers like that is available now for 700 euros or something, you know. And if this is going to be charging $3,000, then probably there are going to be people that won't invest in it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it was Georgia that opened the show as well, yeah.
Yeah, because it's Georgia and Lizzie in the same show. It's the first time they've ever modelled together.
That's interesting. And it's quite a cute bit old school to have it in there.
I think it is. I think it's very much kind of girls dancing at Regine or something. To me, this is very, it's probably my age, but it's very, it's quite sophisticated but quite loose. And
I do agree with what you're saying then, Katherine. It is interesting to look at things like, you know, little sequin jackets and it's not pieces that scream kind of, given how strong that market is, and even like, you know, how that's invaded here. I think it's interesting you mentioned Sandro and Marge, because that aesthetic is very like this.
Yeah. And actually we said we wanted sensual, but she still kept looser cuts but balanced it out in the styling.
That person in the audience with a pink bag on their knee is really annoying.
I know there was someone.
It's someone's jacket, I think.
There was someone in the background at the Dior show with a pink coat, and literally every one of our catwalk images was
the worst thing you can have in a runway shot is the inside of somebody's Burberry raincoat. So it's not quite as bad as that.
But do you remember when they used to shout at you to put your shoes? Oh, they sit there and they still have like
or luggage, because people don't just go to shows; they come with the luggage now.
I think it's interesting to see 31 like a real evening wear look, because I was going to ask.
I love that.
She has to do it.
You've
got to get on that bandwagon.
But also, given her background in events and the red carpet and the celebrity
side
side
of 32.
Could be an interesting way for them to grow the brand by pitching slightly to that.
And it looks youthful, the evening wear.
Yeah.
It does.
I think the way that they're showing it as well, I know that they're in the store, but the fact that it's not the runway and the models haven't come out together, I mean, it'd be interesting how they do the finale, but that has taken it forward.
Yeah, that's interesting. They have gone big with the casting.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, Look 35 is going to be on every single Instagram stream.
Yeah, I'm a bit sick of people just making her naked on the runway. Like she's been naked.
They're going to be nasty about her in the papers or something like that.
No, but literally every show, they just put
nothing on her.
They put her in like a bikini or a sheer dress.
It's the money shot though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's so depressing. It's like, why hair? What do you think about this notion of them maybe pushing more towards the cocktail wear and evening wear as a way of establishing the brand? It's interesting, going back to what you said, Katherine, which I think was such an astute point about that kind of day wear market. Do we think that would be a smart way for the brand to go?
I think also for spring summer you can sort of get more if you're doing a sort of evening wear shop than you can. There's so many items that will just be sort of easy sort of day pieces, so they'll sort of push for the evening wear.
Do you know, evening wear, so few people do evening wear well, and it's sort of automatically assumed that there's a lot of it, but there's not.
And there's not a lot of young evening wear
and
as well.
You know, when people come to me and say I need a dress and they've got money to spend, and you've got to sit down there and it's the same, people are merchandising the same stuff and in the same stores, so it's really, really still not a fully fledged and well-tapped market.
I love these evening dungarees though. Like how cute is that?
gorgeous.
What a great option for a
that's
wedding.
gorgeous.
You know, how
thinking
chic
about
is that?
Yeah, there does feel like a real gap in the market for really cool young evening wear, because most of the younger brands, you know, they're kind of girly, they're not really evening-y.
So I do miss the big finale with all the girls coming on.
Do you?
Yeah. But it's you know,
Should we see some of the close-ups? Even more stripy when you see it.
I like the fact that they've gone really heavy on the casting, but not done an ostentatious show.
Yeah.
I think that's really in keeping with the times as well.
And it does look, it's interesting what we were saying as well
The
about...
bags look fresh, don't they?
Yeah, the bags look really beautiful. Some of the detailing, like those cuffs and the embroidery and the embellishment on those jeans.
And they're not like any others.
No.
They do feel Sonia Rykiel.
And the striped ankle sock is a lovely homage.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
and sunglasses.
And also it's will shift, like it's something to buy into, isn't it?
If you can't afford it.
Yeah.
No, it is. It's very sort of south of France boutique, isn't it? To me,
I'm not mad on the bags. I don't think they feel that modern.
No,
but they're very her.
They're very her. That's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
signature. The
They're
13
sweet.
is totally
Yeah.
signature.
Yeah.
She always did a drawstring bag, and actually they're very
yeah.
big for next season anyway, the little drawstring.
Yeah.
Well, at least it looks very new, you were saying. I mean, so many bags are looking so similar now.
It's a cute play on the sports bar, isn't it?
Yeah, that is very sweet. And you can imagine that being crop tops so everywhere. So you can imagine the pieces being, that jacket's cute as well.
I think with bags now, it's cooler not to know where your bag's from.
Yeah.
That's why there's softer bags, the tote bags. It's cooler to people say, where's that bag from? It's great.
It's interesting seeing the little fur piece because she
Loves fur.
She did fake fur very early on. I mean, she's always used luxury furs as well, but
Yeah.
she did fake fur very early on,
Yeah.
probably in the early 80s.
Well, it does feel like quite a responsive collection. It feels like it is looking at the way that girls are dressing, even stuff like that kind of striped, coloured fun fur. It does feel very kind of.
It doesn't look retro, really, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't. But it doesn't. It also, I don't think it looks like it's trying to sort of provide a new aesthetic or suggest a step forward. It looks very much like it is like this is clothes that you can actually wear.
Yeah, and
right
you can
now.
make those pieces work with your wardrobe now, whatever you have in there.
But are you saying it doesn't have the sort of wow factor?
I wonder if there should be more punch to it.
They don't have a good
for me.
shoe.
I like the evening wear section. I thought that was great, and I think that's an interesting proposition. I love the evening dungarees, but I wonder if
I would have liked a little bit more touch of colour somewhere.
How long's she been there?
Literally her first season.
I don't think she should. It should
I
be
think
any more
it's
punch
great.
than this.
Do you know?
I think the picture's really good.
I think it's really good for how long she's been there, and she's that's a lot of work.
I like that it's not gimmicky. I think it could have been really easily quite annoyingly gimmicky, a bit silly. What do you think, Katherine? Are you impressed?
I think I would have liked to have seen a bit more wow to sort of get her really sort of on the radar, because I think that there's, as you were saying, there's been so many new names and there's been this sort of baton passing this season that I think that this might just not be recognised in the way it should be, perhaps.
I think next season will be her big season. I think that's when it will be the big wow one.
I think there's a lot to buy here.
Yeah.
Like if you look at it from a buyer's perspective, there are a lot of things that will shift.
Buyers will love it.
And potentially that's something
that's a
we
good
don't know what the
starting point.
financial situation is of the company at the moment. Maybe it's a case that there's a lot of work to be done in that arena. So
You'd think that she would have put in more sort of showpieces that would be sort of the pieces, and then this was a very commercial sort
Collection.
of altogether, wasn't it? It's lovely. It's a beautiful sort of capsule, but you'd think there'd be a few big pieces. She's got some really big names in there and models.
But then maybe that's nice in terms of, there is something quite nice about how humble it is. I do really appreciate that.
But do I want that from Sonia Rykiel?
It's not a showpiece brand, is it?
Yeah,
No,
I
it's
kind of
not.
agree, yeah.
And I'm glad it's not coquettish either.
I think
tweed.
it could have a little bit of
It's
well,
removed
and look
all
at
that.
35 is quite
That skirt is, I'd say that's a showpiece. You know, that's going to be shot, isn't it? I
think there's lots of showpieces in there. I think
the evening wear and some later on.
I can imagine lots of young, cool girls wearing the evening wear on the red carpet.
And that's
which
important.
I think could
Because
be
those
where
are
it
the
comes
girls that
into
make
its
this
own.
move, you know, that's that group, that's that culture, you want to get into that.
Because I do think
That's nice, 32.
that, you know, the influence of just like with people, those celebrities, those red carpet girls, they're the influencers now, you know, like it's not enough to have the cover
what I
of
like
Star
about them,
magazine.
they're not just doing the red carpet look on the red carpet. They're just so wonderfully, fabulously fashion and eccentric and indulgent. They're just, following Instagram is just the best thing to do sometimes because it's a beautiful catwalk in quite normal locations.
But I just think it's interesting because we look at a lot of the panels we get when we're doing these panels, we look at it and we go, oh, is that enough for, you know, like, is there enough editorial stuff in there? And sometimes I go, yeah, but does that matter? Because actually the editorial's definitely no longer as important as it was.
And if
now
it's commercially
getting things on the red carpet,
viable, that's a good, and red carpet. Red carpets.
Well, getting things on cool girls on Instagram is, you know, more valid than getting them shot for like, I don't know, Dazed or whatever. It's interesting. It's the new influence.
So true. It gives you ideas of how to wear pieces that you never thought of before. Yeah. And you can only do it so many times, and you think, oh, okay.
Very depressing.
Do you notice that with Grazia, just that thirst for kind of a celebrity twist to almost every fashion story, isn't it?
I mean, it's very difficult to sell a story unless there's a face behind it. And I think that's the, you know, malaise of our age, really. Yeah. You know, no one's interested in just seeing print on a piece of paper. You want that person that you recognise and identify with, and, you know, it gives that cachet. And I think that peer-to-peer sensibility that you get from Instagram, that it explains the depth of, you know, connection that people have with the people that they follow.
Yeah. So do you think the kind of the smartest thing she could have done then is exactly this amazing casting of girls, lots of girls
are going to be tomorrow, in 5 minutes time, I mean, wherever it's going to be, they're going to be pushing it out.
It'd be really interesting to see what their social strategy is after this.
Yeah. And they look good in it, those girls. They don't look like, it's not something that they wouldn't be.
No, it looks organic. What would a smart social strategy for them be, do you think?
I think we're talking a lot about this Parisian French girl that we're all like, oh, you know, but Françoise Hardy is obviously, she's not, you know, knocking around now. Who is that girl now? Yeah. And they've got to find out who that girl is, and maybe she's 15 girls living in Paris or whatever, and just work with them and really
and does a 15-year-old girl over here aspire to that, like we
not
do?
15-year-old.
No, but I'm saying, what does you know, it's interesting, does the next generation dance still aspire to that or not?
Yeah. I mean, what I really mean is the young French blogger girls. Yeah. Or, you know, the girls that are really...
I don't see that as being that French.
I have to say, I know what you mean from what we were talking about before.
I thought you'd see more pom-poms or you know, the name on it, the Chaten or the bows.
But do you feel that's become a cliche? I feel like now we've had such a proliferation of that on the high street, you know, Eiffel Tower jumpers, kind of bonjour jumpers. I wonder if there's kind of, it's hard to do French without looking like pastiche.
Yeah, but there must be the next stage on. There must be the next step on from that. It's sort of, I think they might have missed a trick there.
I just think if you think about the French girls, like the Caroline de Maigret,
and that book, How to Be Parisian.
How to Be Parisian. This isn't really that.
No, it's not at all. You know? It's not very undone. It's a, you know, it's not kind of like falling off or anything like that. So it is interesting. You wonder who are these.
Maybe when you go into store and you see the extended basics, you're going to get that.
But I mean, jacket from 19, that's quite lady.
Yeah, but then if you think also Miu Miu have done that really well, of kind of that lady look, and they've canvassed a lot of the cool French girls. So Adele, blue is the warmest colour, you know, and you can imagine her looking really great in there. So it's kind of, I think you're right, it's about kind of finding those girls.
Denim is kind of like that. That's kind of French, but it still could be
you
more
also
like
don't,
Chloe and
you also don't just want the French girls. You know, you want all of those girls. Those Italian bloggers are brilliant too. Yeah, there's some amazing ones.
But I think if you want an identity, it would be interesting to go.
They've got to work out who
what is the identity.
You know, who they're selling us, what that.
It's a good start.
Yeah, but great. What would she want? You know, if she was watching this, if she was a young woman starting out now, because when she did what she did then, that was quite radical for the time. She was very left bank fashion.
She wasn't copying or just.
Yeah, and I think that this is interesting because it's not literal, and it's what does a young girl wear now, and also with this social media, Does it have to be so isolated to Parisian?
No.
Anyway,
Yeah.
does that rule really have to be
That's what is the great thing with social media.
Sonia Rykiel?
But then you wonder if it, obviously you wouldn't want exclusive to that, but you wonder if that would be what would make its starting point would need to be some kind of sense of specific.
I would think the Middle Eastern customer or the Japanese customer who's really obsessed with Sonia Rykiel would really want something that looked
like her.
like her,
And
and I
if-
don't know whether
yeah.
this does.
If you think of the brands like, for instance, Acne, there is something Scandinavian about the
Yeah.
aesthetic. That's
Yeah.
what people are buying into.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a brand that you need.
And I do think, that there is an
heart
interesting
behind
market for I think that book, that kind of like
great.
was mind-numbingly everywhere, that How to Be Parisian, but you can go on Instagram without seeing it.
It's
There's obviously a market.
Great
there's some,
timing, just pre-Paris fashion, it kicks it all off. You suddenly think,
they should have
gosh.
collaborated with that.
Yeah, but it would have all been like,
Yeah. Cigarette, hair in front of the face.
I mean, I
take
think
a lover.
I mean, I have to draw us that she's had 3 months
Yeah.
to get that together.
Yeah.
I
It's
think
beautiful. It's concise. It's
I love this opening 3. I think if you were sat there, that would have been had a
that's
massive
pretty cool.
impact.
lovely, fresh, to put, just white down the catwalk. It's really nice. It's nice.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's nice. It's not amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's nice. But there is lots of stuff you can buy.
But then it's got more character than a lot of kind of just nice. It's not like being sat at kind of, loads of the shows where it is just product, just kind of like, I still think there is character.
I think they'll be very pleased with what she's done, and I think her selling team will be very pleased. They've got lots of things to sell, and so
Look how far Saint Laurent has shifted. I mean, that was almost like clearing the deck and starting all over again. I don't think this is alienating the existing customer.
No.
But at the same time, isn't it time for a brand like Sonia Rykiel that was so stuck in that groove to actually, redefine who that what they're presenting?
Yeah.
We talked about ego earlier on as well. What she hasn't done is come and sort of stamped an ego all over it.
No.
So that's interesting.
I'm grateful for that as well. She didn't have time to do that anyway.
But I'm sure that's why they felt she was the right woman.
But then
for the
she's
job.
turned it around well in a small space of time.
I think
she's
so.
produced something beautiful, really. Nice, but it's very beautiful.
So you're impressed?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
Very much so.
I'd like to see next season.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it makes you
it's
want to
got
come.
me
You definitely want to
excited
come back
about-
and see now. Let's see the next day.
Well, it's got me thinking about, where am I going to see this? Who's going to wear it? Who are they going to gift it to? Who are they going to work with? And I guess it's got me thinking about the brand again, which is probably, I think, the point, isn't it? They don't want to do a big show that they're not like a Balmain type, are they? They want to do something that's
They didn't
more.
even slip a slogan jumper in there, did they?
I know.
No, she did it.
Or a beret. Or
But they'll be in the commercial collection, I'm sure.
Then-
Berets aplenty, slogan jumpers everywhere. Should we give her a clap then?
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.